Hello, in this episode, now that's what I call faith, our preaching calendar process, transitioning from a teaching center to a training center, and the case for volunteer empowerment.
I see what you did there. This is often the first time I see these, and so like, it's like, I see what you did, Danielle. You're so clever.
I had to Google some stuff. So first, megachurch memories.
Nobody knows what we're talking about yet, though.
No, right?
Yeah, they don't get the joke.
Yeah, no. You'll get it in a minute. You'll get it in a minute.
Maybe. I don't know.
You won't. It's fine. It's only for me. It's like a little blip of creativity.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so mega church memories. This is where we talk about what was, what should or shouldn't have been, kind of our growing up in the mega church movement. And so you wanted to talk about contemporary worship and the explosion of that whole time.
Yeah. Lots of music around these times, and it was actually a funny time of changing music. So I read the book that the Jesus Revolution movie was based on. That was just like kind of this historical chronicle of that whole movement, that whole time period. And music was such a huge part of, this kind of hippie movement, all that kind of stuff. And it was so weird when I realized that, like, when I started in ministry, it was right on the heels of that. And so there was still like a lot of those echoes of that, hippie music that turned into CCM and contemporary Christian, all the worship culture and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, I think about that as ancient history, and that was like right before I came into ministry and you came in. So anyway, music was big, and the rise of Hillsong at that time, and Darlene Check, and these, remember the CD clubs that you did like a box of CDs.
I remember the like secular version of that. Yeah. And then there was like a Christian version on top of it. Yeah. And we had do you remember we had a music store in Erie called Gone Fishin'?
I do.
But it was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like so cheesy, but it was awesome. I remember just going there.
Christian
we would like
music store. Yeah.
Through all the music.
Yeah. What do you remember about that time?
I remember, like, similarly to what you're saying, I remember all the, like, again, secular than Christian, wow compilations.
Right.
Like, now that's what I call faith.
Right.
That's what I call worship. Now that's what I call heaven
thus
or whatever.
Your introduction.
That's my introduction.
Your little nod to that. Yeah.
And I remember, obviously that also started, like, you go from one singer or an ensemble singer or a choir to like bands then, like on Sunday. So that was like a big movement. And like, I have a vivid memory of our youth team, like our drama team / band dressing up like the current adult praise band and leading worship as their caricatures
them
on a Sunday morning. Like, but anyway, but I just remember it was so funny. I still, sometimes when I hear those kids' names, I still see them acting like those adults.
I totally forgot about that till just now. That's
so
pretty wild.
Classic.
Yeah. And unfortunately for a lot of churches, this was a turning point moment. I mean, there's a part of this era that was called the worship wars.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Where, churches would start to incorporate quote unquote contemporary. Yeah, probably.
Anyway.
Quote unquote contemporary worship.
Yeah.
And bringing drums on the stage and, all the whatever that caused a lot of churches a lot of strife at the time. So, but listen, I wanted to do something fun.
Okay.
I want to do a little game.
Great.
Okay. And I may even sing a little bit, but just to get you into, but you
special treat.
You can't look at this screen because I have my notes over here.
I will look over here and drink my water.
And I want to see if you can fill in the blank of the. I'll start the lyric.
Okay.
And to see if you can guess the next lyric
I'm not good at lyrics. Okay.
Of a worship song.
All right. But you're going to say it or sing it?
I'm going to say it at first, and then if you really need it, I'll sing it.
I might need the tune. I might need the melody.
Okay. So the first one's an easy one. Okay. This is 1989. Lord, I lift your name on high.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm there.
So you came from heaven to earth to show the way.
From the earth to the... No, from the... Wait. You came from the something to the something.
Right.
From the grave to the sky.
No.
No.
That's too soon.
Oh, it's too soon?
Came from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross.
Is it really earth to the cross?
Yeah.
I thought that, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
My debt to pay.
From the earth to the cross, my debt to pay.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
All right.
I thought you'd get that one. You're in trouble.
Was two in my head.
You're in trouble for the rest.
No, I was two in my head. I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Here's one.
Okay.
One band that we used to call Delirio 5.
Delirious. Yeah.
Delirious. Because I think they had a 5 in the place of an S.
Delirio 5. Yeah. It literally said Delirio 5. Yeah.
Okay. This is the famous Did You Feel the Mountains Tremble?
Boy. Okay.
Okay. Ready?
Okay. Yep.
Did you feel the mountains tremble? Did you hear the oceans roar?
Oh no! We need to cancel this game.
No, it's good. Oceans
I don't know,
roar.
something about a floor. I don't know.
When the people rose to sing of Jesus Christ, the risen one.
That doesn't even rhyme.
No, correct.
Give me a rhyming one.
All right.
Wow.
Okay.
This is so
Here,
sad.
come on. No, this is a good one. This is a good
okay.
one. All right, here, you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah, sort of.
The classic worship song, 1994.
Okay.
Shout to the Lord.
Oh boy. Okay.
Right out the gates.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My Jesus, my Savior, Lord, there is none like you.
All of my days, I want to praise the wonder of your mighty name.
Love. Good job,
Love it.
though.
Love
That
it.
was good. That
Here's
was
the thing.
good.
I'm realizing this
good.
now.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the words from like chorus to chorus and verse to verse a lot back then.
Sometimes, that's right. Yeah. They would
Anyway.
switch out
Yeah.
a word to be, super creative. All right, ready? Couple more.
Yeah, okay.
I could sing of your love forever. Okay.
Maybe
Delirio
if
5.
I know the words.
Delirio 5. I'm going to a bridge now.
Oh crap. Okay. Whoops.
Oh, I feel like dancing.
No.
It's foolishness, I know.
Mm-hmm.
But when the
No.
world has seen the light,
Yeah.
they
I
will-
should have quizzed you.
They will dance with joy like we're dancing now. And this was always the awkward one where
Yes.
nobody was dancing.
No one was dancing.
But we're singing. They will dance with
And
joy
we're-
like we're dancing now.
We're doing
and we're
this.
doing the white man
Maximum.
shuffle.
Yeah. Wow. These are wow.
Okay,
I
yeah.
should know all these.
That's all right. It's triggering other people, I
It
guarantee
is.
you.
I know. They're like.
So here was
freaking out.
here was one of my favorites. Above all. Do you remember this
Above
one?
all
Above all.
powers,
Yeah. Above all kingdoms. Above all thrones. Above all.
Is it something the world has never known?
Yes.
Above, we already said powers.
We said kingdoms and
kingdoms.
thrones. Above all thrones. Above all.
It's not nature.
No, wonders.
Wonders the world has ever known.
The world has ever
Oh, yeah.
known.
Michael.
Yeah. That was a good one. It was originally Paul Baloche.
Oh yeah. That makes sense.
All right, last one.
What a weird name.
In the Secret.
In the quiet place. Yeah.
Okay, I want to know you. Okay? I am reaching for the highest goal
This is another one where they changed the words.
that I might receive the prize.
I don't know.
Pressing onward, pushing every hindrance aside, out of my way, because I want to know you more. More and more.
Yeah.
All right, there it is.
Okay. Wow.
You didn't do
great.
great.
No.
you didn't do great.
I didn't do great.
Yeah, that's all right. You were more
Yikes.
behind the scenes working on corralling youth.
Yeah. I should know this. I'm gonna have to. I have to do a playlist.
No, you really aren't.
No.
So
Dang,
this came
deep cuts.
because I had a long drive last week and was listening to some old
fun.
deep cuts, and that's what made
Yeah.
me think of it.
Some of them are great.
P.S. I included it in my email distribution letter last week. But did you know that Jesus Freak DC Talk?
Yeah. Yeah.
DC Talk had a remix of Jesus Freak that was done by Owl City. Do you remember Owl
Oh,
City?
yeah.
The
No, I
people that
didn't
did
know that.
Fireflies.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had that really
Wait,
vibey
Owl City redid it?
remixed
Oh,
Jesus
that's
Freak.
cool.
The Owl City had like that really
Yeah,
vibey
yeah.
sound, like chimey almost,
yeah,
like
yeah.
stuff. And man, it is cool.
Oh, that's
it's
cool.
like the coolest version
Oh,
of
cool.
Jesus Freak I've
Okay.
ever heard. So,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Interesting. I wonder
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I included it in my
Listen to
little
it.
favorite things
Yeah.
thing last week because
That's cool.
I came across it during my drive.
And some other things.
Yeah.
Some titles, guys. Some titles of some of those songs were not okay. Lasting benefits.
Lasting benefits, Danielle.
Games for podcasts.
I think you're shook right now.
I am shook.
Are you
I
a little
can't.
shook?
Yeah, I'm very shook.
I can tell by the look on
no,
your
I'm
face.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah. go ahead.
Was the music revolution generally good from the megachurch era? Like, do we think contemporary worship had its? Because here's what's happening right now. There's
Yeah.
a little bit of a shift back to
Right.
like hey, we want more liturgical, we want more tried and true, we want more historical, we want more. And obviously there's a whole industry that grew up around contemporary Christian music that still exists. And I would say some of it's good, some of it's like really bad.
Yes. Right. Oh, right.
Just lyrically.
Yes.
And, some of that stuff.
Yeah. And even just, again, we're going to lose 8 pastors, but like it, for one benefit, again, you might not agree.
No, go ahead.
But it started to kind of break the idea that like the hymnal was like an appendix to the Bible.
That's good.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it obviously lasting texts, sacred lyrics, all those kind of things, but like not sacred, same as the Word of God.
That's
and I
right.
think it like those kind of got
and
married.
I think what's always interesting is that like, first of all, I think we can probably say definitively that there are a lot of hymns, not all of them, but there are a lot of hymns who are more theologically rich and grounded than a lot of contemporary worship songs.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not to say contemporary worship songs are not biblical or do not have a great, kind of foundation in the scriptures, but you read some of these old hymns and it's like
word for word
like
almost.
holy cow.
Yeah.
I just feel like I went through an undergrad class in theology.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just really rich.
Yeah.
Now some of them are terrible. Like
Sure.
some hymns are just terrible.
Yeah.
So, but what I think is funny, we're on a way down a rabbit hole here, but what I think is interesting is that there is a lot of sentimentality around these things that then people attach that to right and wrong.
Yeah.
So because these are the songs I sang in church when I was growing up, therefore they are what Jesus wants.
Right.
And what's funny is to have a generation like me and you, or even a little later, who grew up on these contemporary worship songs, is that same thing going to happen where we introduce some new songs and they're like, we need to get back to shout to the Lord. That was
wait, what?
As the deer, that's the true biblical,
got to get back there as the deer. You got to get there.
Listen, that's right out of the Psalms.
All right, let's dig ourselves out of this hole. Okay, let's move on to training notes. So this is where we dedicate some overflow from staff trainings, Q&A, and things like that, just trainings that you're doing. So today you wanted to talk about our preaching calendar process a little bit.
Yeah, so it just kind of because it's right on the top of the mind here. We've I just laid out my proposal for 2025-2026. So we go from September to August, and so starting next September through the August of 2026. Kind of laid out our series. I try to do that in February, March timeframe.
So to be clear, this is like February, March 2025 for our ministry year. Yeah.
25-26. Yeah.
Fall.
So we're about, normally about 18 months ahead with our series anyway, and detailed descriptions and the reasons why and that sort of thing. So that process generally goes to, a couple of you guys are kind of my creative brain to help with the first pass, and then we'll go to our pastoral team to talk about, is this the kind of stuff our congregations need to hear, and then the final approval goes through the elders. So I just talked to the elders the other night, and everybody was pretty pumped about this run. So yeah, I'm super excited about it. The process is always interesting. I always try to shift it up a little bit. Like sometimes I kind of do the initial pass myself, just me and God for a couple days, and asking. I've got a whole list of questions that I ask, about what does our congregation need to hear, what does God want to say, what does the moment call for, are there any big initiatives coming up that we need to account for, what is the fall, winter, spring, summer seasons call for, those kind of things. I have a bunch of filters, and then just kind of land on the series schedule for those months. And so I would probably say, I'm excited. There's some first timers in here. So first time I'm preaching through Habakkuk. So yay. Habakkuk in the fall.
We'll be able to see how many people pronounce that for 3 months.
Or Habakkuk.
Well, we actually should put how we want it pronounced.
Yeah, we probably need to do that.
Anyway,
no. Got one coming up on spiritual warfare. the questions from Jesus one I'm super excited about. So,
yeah, that's going to be really cool.
Just going through the Gospels and looking at where Jesus asked questions, and then we're making each of those questions kind of a title of a sermon, and then talking about how do we answer those questions, kind of thing. So that'll be fun. And then the big one is we're starting a big long honking deal in the Book of Acts.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think 31 weeks or something like that through Acts.
Straight through, right?
Yeah, straight through. No breaks.
That'll be different.
So yeah,
but cool.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So anyway, that's just wanted to give people a little insight into our process there. And,
that's great.
And how we're trying to get ahead of that game.
And I think on the other side, one thing that might be helpful too for people, even if you wanted to do like 3 months at a time or 6 months at a time, like a little baby step. We've then, since this started, we use that as a foundation for calendaring other things like programming events or classes or whatever. And it really helps you to think through the year. So if we know, we're coming up on Acts, what are some courses we might want to offer or experiences we might want to put around that? So yeah, it's just like another helpful way to plan, like thoughtfully plan your year.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Now, the irony of bringing that up today is we're getting ready to talk to Dave and Shane about becoming a training center. And this is the teaching. And like I've said before, like both are important.
Absolutely.
And so, we're kind of settling our teaching side of things well ahead. And I think we'll be creating the training side of things a little bit more as we go. So
yeah, great. Yeah. Cool. As we tweak our assimilation model to have more of a disciple-making focus and invent a multiplication funnel to await the lake and reach our region, we're learning as we go. So each week we want to have a topic that we discuss in front of you and with you, and practical moments of learning that we have around that week. Today's topic is helping churches transition from a teaching center to a training center. And I'm a little nervous today because...
It's a big day,
I know.
Isn't it? The OGs are here.
Yeah.
The OGs.
Dave and Shane are joining us. They're the co-founders of Clarity House. They have huge, long, amazing bios. They have had so much influence in the church, and so we'll obviously put those in the show notes for them. But the important thing I want to share is that Dave has a wife named Kim, and you share 3 children, Emma, Izzy, and Frankie. And Shane, you live in Minneapolis.
It's true. That is a place.
I want to say Minneapolis because I just want to call that with your wife, Heather. And so you guys are just awesome guys, amazing people. We're so excited to talk to you today. And so, so why don't we start first? Do you want to start first by talking about why we're talking about training centers?
Yeah. So, and the thing, we've dripped conversation about this throughout this podcast. I mean, I think it's one of those things for us that has been one of the big shifts in understanding, most churches, we do a lot of teaching, lots of sermons, lots of trainings, we're creating content all the time. And, pastors have this, this crazy deadline that comes around every Sunday that you have to have something to say, and a lot of times the microphone to say it in. And I think one of our profound takeaways from you guys was just, what would it look like to actually train the church, train our congregations in the ways of Jesus and the ways of godliness. And the one of the quotes that we say often on the show, the church in America is over-inspired and under-trained. So we know how to worship, we know how to come together and raise our hands and get excited in a crowd and get motivated, maybe even, and maybe even walk away with some application points. But a lot of people walk out and just don't really know what to do with that in real life. And so, you guys not only helped to train us, but those training principles is one of the reasons you're here in person. You're helping us to make that transition and putting some language around it. So would just love to kind of hear some general ideas about the importance of that training center concept, and some of your thoughts on why the church needs this right now. and then we'll go from there. So Dave, why don't you start off? Throw to you.
Well, first of all, I think we just want to say we love being here in Erie. We've never had a bad day in Erie. Like every time we come, it's like the weather clears up.
Amen.
The lake looks amazing. I'm like, I assume you have other days because I watch from Atlanta and I see the weather coming in. I'm like, oh man, those guys are hurting. But every time we're here,
there's a bubble.
Every time we're here, it's absolutely amazing.
Oh, you're so lucky.
We love coming here.
Love it.
We felt like we were coming home.
It was, and it's Eerie, but it's you guys. You guys. We love being with you guys.
Yeah.
And
Same.
the, I was thinking earlier about the bumper sticker you guys sent us about it's okay to love Erie.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, we love Erie.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. So talk a little bit about this training center concept, and maybe kind of ground us biblically here a little bit, Dave, as you did with us today a little earlier. I think it was so profound to think about, this idea through that lens.
Yeah. So it is a deep passion. I mean, I would just say, if I think about potentially ultimate contribution from my life, I hope that the church becomes as much of a training center in the next 50 years as it has been a teaching center for so many years. So first of all, just want to say, one, love teaching and preaching, believe in the power of teaching and preaching. So anything we talk about in regard to training is not the elimination of teaching or preaching.
That's a good point. Yeah,
we love that. We think it's powerful. We're commanded to do that in Scripture. It's an important piece of what we do. But what we are trying to do is help churches expand their imagination, that part of what it means organizationally for us to develop men and women into who God's made them to be is that we have to become a training center as well. We have to be able to go from the big ideas that inspire everyone to how do I put it into practice. I always found that a lot of people have difficulty going live on Monday with what they heard on Sunday.
100%. Yep.
And so how do we create environments that allow people to practice things, grow confidence and competence in things, so that when they are living out there in the real world, more today being those who are living in exile, so to speak, that they are functioning as Daniels and Esthers in exile, which means I don't go out on Monday to survive. I go out on Monday and it's possible for me to thrive.
Yeah, that's really good.
And I think many people today are asking the same questions that the people of Israel were asking in exile. And the questions of exile is, how do I worship God when I'm outside the land and there is no temple? I think that's a primary question in people's mind when they go to work on Monday is, how do I worship God outside the temple, outside the whole, the land, so to speak? And so when it comes to things like training, for me, I realized that as a soccer coach, I knew how to make soccer players. And I loved what I got in seminary. I'm really thankful for my seminary experience. But my seminary experience taught me to teach and preach. It didn't show me how to train, but I did have that in my past experience in being a soccer coach. And I thought, what if we took some of those same kind of principles that I knew as a soccer coach to say, how can we take the teaching of the church and now train for it? And so biblically, we kind of ground that in 1 Corinthians 4 first in regard to Paul writing to the Corinthian church, which I think we have a lot in common with as Americans. I think if there's any church in the New Testament that we have more, it's probably the Corinthian church. And so in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, and I got this from my time at 3DM, he said, I write this not to shame you, but to warn you, even though you have 10,000 teachers, and the word there is pedagogues, people to teach you the information, he says, you don't have many fathers. And then he says, so I'm sending you Timothy, imitate him as, the connotation there is he imitates me as I've imitated Christ. And so he's looking at the Corinthians who have the best teachers in the world. I mean, if discipleship could come by just teaching, you would expect Corinth to be the most spiritually mature church in the New Testament. They got the best teachers in the world coming through, and yet they're the most spiritually immature. And Paul says, I write this not to shame you, but to warn you. You got 10,000 pedagogues. You got all the teachers in the world, but you don't have anyone to stand at the shoulder of. In the Greek world, the boys at 12 would, 1 to 12, they're getting taught by the pedagogue, the equivalent of reading, writing, arithmetic. But at 12, the boys are being handed over to their dads, the girls to their moms, to stand at the shoulder of, to learn the ways of. And that's just deeply convicting to me, because I'm taught and trained as a teacher preacher, and I love it. But the question was, how am I opening up the shoulder for people to have accessibility in a different kind of way, to learn the thing behind the thing, and to learn the ways of Jesus, not just the words of Jesus.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's powerful in that passage too. He literally says that I will send you Timothy, who will remind you of my way of life in Christ Jesus, which agrees with what I teach in every place, everywhere. So he's connecting the two of those. But I would like the challenge that was given to me years ago on that love teaching was, but how do you pass on a way of life?
Yeah.
And can you pass on a way of life from a pulpit? I can pass on teaching, but can I pass on a way of life from a pulpit?
Yeah, which is challenging, because I know as a pastor you can hide behind a pulpit.
Right.
There's distance there for like a congregant.
Sure.
For sure.
And you can say all kind of nice words, and people can leave inspired. But the pressure on a trainer is different, especially if you embrace this kind of a philosophy, because now all of a sudden you're bringing your life to bear.
Right. Right. And where it really, the kind of rubber hits the road for at least me, and this was one of the biggest repentances of my life, and one that I still have to make because my default is set so strongly. I realized, in regard to the church and the ministry that I was leading, quote unquote leading, really, I had become much more of a presenter than a leader.
Oh, wow.
And so I was great at crafting presentations. And because I could create presentations, I could get a leadership job. But that didn't mean that I was actually leading.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the big repentances for me is I had to go from being a presenter to being a leader. And that means opening up a different accessibility to myself versus just stepping in and doing the magic show every Sunday to say, all right, how do I create other environments to do exactly what Shane talked about, which is pass on a way of life. And, honestly, one of the biggest questions that's intimidating at first is, he says, imitate my way of life. Do I have a life worth imitating?
Right.
Because as a presenter, I can present great presentations and not have a life worth imitating. And one of the things about training is it exposes the trainer, right? Yeah. It's like, am I practicing this stuff enough that if someone were to be at my shoulder, they could actually catch on to that way of life?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved you brought in today this concept of Daniel. I'd like to talk about that, because when they were in exile in Babylon, the Babylonians were expert trainers.
They were great.
They had a whole system.
We'll give you a new way of life.
That's right. Yeah. And it really was meant to erase your past.
You get a new name, literally, you get a new name. And Daniel 1, he's trained for 3 years in the Babylonian way of life. The Babylonians were incredibly intentional about the kinds of disciples that they were making.
Wow. Yeah.
So
way more intentional than we are. I mean, literally, new name, new way of life. And yet Daniel is able to thrive in that world.
Yeah.
And I love the way because as he's getting trained, his trainer and him have a conversation, and he says, could we practice a different way? And the trainer is really hesitant. And I love Daniel's response, because he doesn't say what we normally say in our relationship with the world, which is, trust us, we know the right way. He says, not trust us, but test us.
Yeah.
I think to be a church that's living in a world that, mirrors, what you would find in exile, we've got to move out of trust us to test us. Like, do we actually believe that our way of life can be tested and found better?
Yeah.
Wow.
And too many times we're saying, hey, I know you're living, Monday through Friday, Saturday or whatever, coming to church, trust us, we've got the answers here.
Right.
Versus, no, let's invite you to a training and let's train you in a way of life and test it. Test it to see if it doesn't actually create a better life for you. Now, that doesn't mean it's immune from suffering. We're not talking about easy. We're talking about better.
My mind always goes, when you guys talk about these things, my mind goes to just how there really is a minimal difference between most Christians and most non-Christians in our culture today. And this, I think, my conviction has been around the idea that this kind of shift can really move that needle, like you're saying, so that we actually look different, and it, like you're saying, proves itself.
Yeah. I want to take us into the room for a minute, because one of the, so we're in the theoretical here and biblical. I want to take us into the room because, you know, obviously we sat with you guys for 9 or 10 months of an experience together, and you're back today doing some stuff. And one of the things that compelled me so much was just the way you trained. It wasn't even as much as what we got out of it at the end. That was phenomenal. But watching you train. And one of the things, and we could talk for hours and hours and days about this, but I'd like to take us to the very beginning, because I think one of the things you do so well is kind of priming a room, priming a group to get ready for what they will receive or what they will be trained in. Yeah. And I'd love you, I'm just going to leave it there. I'd love you just to talk about that. Like, what is your approach? How do you guys do that? Obviously you have to deliver on that in the end, but there's something about those first moments that it's like, man, by just the setup, we're all leaning in going, come on, let's, and so just talk us through that, you know, that process for you.
Our language for that at Clarity House is, we say we reflect and receive, how we think about that. And the reflect is always a question or something that's opening up the autobiographical side of someone's brain, so that they're going into their story, they're going back into something they already know, something they've already experienced that's outside of where we're going to head. And what that does is it actually will open up their long-term memory and allow them to, whatever new thing that they're going to receive, actually be able to implant that. But it also becomes a building block for, all right, we're opening that up. We're opening up both their heart and their mind in many ways through that. And then we'll go into kind of biblical grounding on that and receiving on that. And so like today, today we were talking, today's all about training. And so simply we asked people to identify, like, what was one of the best training experiences you've ever been a part of, or one of the worst? You could choose, you know. It was funny, the room chose the best, but I thought it was really interesting because that
surprised
means,
us.
Yeah, it did surprise us. We thought it would go the other way, but at the same time, what it means to us is the impact of good training. People remembered when they were in a place, but everyone went to that place in their mind, and they described it a bit together, right? First they identified it themselves and then talked about it together. And then we mined out, well, what's good training and what's bad training from your experiences first on that.
Yeah, I mean, that insight for us, Jesse Cruikshank really introduced that to us.
Our brain scientist friend.
Yes, that's right. And she just said,
everybody needs a brain scientist, don't they? Yeah.
She says, here's the way it works. So we do that. But the other piece on the receive portion is intentional for us as well. And it's around two things. One, we at Clarity House want everyone to know when we lead you through a process, you can trust it, not because you trust Dave and Shane, but it's deeply biblical. So we always want to anchor things. Not is it it is going to be pragmatic, it is going to be practical, but it's first biblical. Not does it work, but is it godly? Like hopefully we're demonstrating that. Second, it's also intentional because most people in the Christian world value teaching. And so we want to demonstrate value where people find value so that we can call them into a world that they may not think is valuable yet. So part of it is just kind of missional DNA, which is you can't just expect someone to value what you value. You got to demonstrate value in their world so that you can call them into your world. And so in most of the places we go, you know, in America today, there's a high value for, you know, quality teaching. So it's like, we're going to meet you where you're at with what you value. And in doing that, it'll give us the trust equity, because truth travels at the rate of trust. It'll give us the trust equity to call you to places that you wouldn't have gone if we would have started there.
This is also what he does. Which is just say phrases that stick with you for 3 weeks.
Truth travels at the rate of the speed of trust. That's a doozy.
That's a good one.
All right. So, and again, without giving away all your secrets, I realize we're, one of the things that you introduced us to is just the power of tools. That tools do a different work than teaching, and they're a part of training, but they provide a really valuable aspect to it. And so can you just talk about tools, maybe describe them, define them for people who might be listening that are just like, oh man, I don't know what that means. But also just the power of tools, how you use them, how people can use them when they're successful, those sorts of things. So talk about tools a little bit.
Why don't you give the rubric, Dave, of tools and things, and then I think it'd be fun to connect. I want to connect one of them to what I've watched you actually now design, and we can actually say, okay, cool. How does that work?
Cool. Yeah. So, first of all, again, when I was first learning to disciple people, I knew how to teach, and if someone wanted to be discipled, all I knew to introduce them to was my library, because I had read these books, and these books had profound. But it's really hard to reproduce libraries. And it takes a long time, and not everyone can go to seminary and do all that kind of stuff. And so when I came into 3DM, 3DM had a toolkit, and I was like, man, there's something here. What is this? But it was really when I connected it to recognizing that Jesus had a toolkit too, and his toolkit was parables, that all of a sudden this whole world opened up to me. And so Warren Wiersbe talks about the hermeneutic of a parable is that it starts as a story. So it's just a story of a guy going from Jerusalem to Jericho. But if you'll sit with it long enough, the picture will become a mirror. Now all of a sudden the question is, am I the priest? Am I the Levite? Am I the Good Samaritan? Usually it would turn from a picture to a mirror about 20 minutes after Jesus left, and the Pharisees would be like, is he talking about us? Right? That kind of moment. So all of a sudden, exactly, that moment, it becomes a diagnostic. Who am I? But it still hasn't done its final work until it becomes a window. How do I see the whole world now through the lens of a good Samaritan? So what I realized that Jesus was doing is he was stacking all kinds of theological knowledge and understanding, all kinds of scripture and biblical kind of stuff, practice, experience. He was putting it into an easily reproduced form that was consistently moving from picture to mirror and window in people's lives, that had the possibility to change paradigms and practice at the same time. So when I realized, okay, a good tool is just simply a modern day parable that is a deep well of theology and scripture and experience. It's a never-ending well in a certain kind of way, but it's easily repeated, and it's not just simply an illustration. It moves beyond the picture to now diagnostic. It's challenging me. Where am I doing well? Where am I not doing well? I can go back to it over and over again and use it as a diagnostic. But then even beyond that, it opens up my eyes to see the world through the window in a whole different way of life. And I realized, we need, if we're going to become training centers, we need not just libraries, we need toolkits. And how do we help churches codify so much of their teaching down into a toolkit that becomes picture, mirror, window?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so maybe an example would be helpful, right?
Yeah.
What do we mean by that? So one that we use a lot of times, and we've introduced you guys and things as well, is just the idea that Jesus lived a three-dimensional life, right? Very simple. Little triangle, three-dimensional life. Upward dimension, inward dimension, outward dimension. Scripture-wise, we can go to 100 scripture. You start seeing that, you see it all through the Gospels, right? Jesus, Luke 6, he prays all night to the Father. He chooses 12 that he pulls close. They immediately move out. And you can go all the way to the cross with that one, right? Like you're going to see, what does he do at the cross? He Father, forgive them. Upward dimension, for they don't know what they're doing. Inward dimension looks at John and says,
take care of my mom.
Take mother. And then immediately says the thief at the cross, right? So you see this all the way through, right? Yeah. Over and over again. Becomes a diagnostic when I think about, am I living a life that is upward, inward, and outward? Where am I strong? Where am I weak? Right? We can assess that on that. And then it becomes a window, and this is where I want to tie back to one of the tools that you recently created for something we're doing with handcrafted calling, around personal calling. And this idea of a essential lens to look at calling, three lenses to look at calling, right?
Yep.
Well, if you think about what that is, it's really the same three dimensions. It's, our calling is a gift. That's the upward side of things, right? Our calling is an invitation. We get to collaborate. We get to be a part of something together that God's inviting us into together. It's a responsibility. It's the outward dimension on that too. So we think about that too, that like now it becomes a window that I start to see everything. So when we heard that from you, we were like, oh, that's up in and out. And like that's, and we're going, even the way we arranged it, and we were like, okay, we're going to arrange it from that lens. And that has become a diagnostic tool now for people, and then a way for them to see the world that they step into.
So now I can create 100 different triangles,
right?
Because every new context requires a new solution. It just means how am I naming up in and out in every situation.
Oh, that's cool.
So now it's a window that allows me to go to a million places, but all the language comes back to one big idea of up in and out.
That's great. Okay, first of all, I didn't say this in front of them, but I've been thinking about it since. I think obviously those two are geniuses in their own right. They're very like intelligent, smart. You can tell God is using them. Whenever I've come up near or we've experienced like other consultants or like, you know, people even like in books giving advice or whatever, and this might just be my cynical nature, but I feel like the tone is very often what you're doing or what you did was bad. So let's tell you how so now let's just learn and pivot. It's like learn and pivot. So it's like you're saying, oh, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. But I think for them, they have seen so much in church history, even this recent history, that they can see what actually is valuable. So I've never felt with them like we just need to throw the baby out with the bathwater and whatever. And so I've really appreciated their kind of, they literally look at what we're doing and have helped us see like this is what works still for us, which I think is so helpful when you're making a transition. If you can like root in something that you're not changing everything all at once. That's right. You know. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I really appreciate that about them.
Yeah. It's a posture thing.
It is.
There's just such a humble posture of going, we're literally here to serve you.
Yeah.
We want to build on all the great things you're already doing and just help you take them further and take them to the next level. So
I'm glad we
love
found
those
them.
guys.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about something that happened this week.
Yeah. You had a little experience, didn't you?
I had a big experience.
How did it go?
It was great.
Tell
so I went to Leading Smart gathering. That's Tim Stevens, his organization. We can put the link in the show notes. They have 2 or 3 a year.
Tim previously of Granger Church, which is where we first met him. I remember sitting in Tim's office as an executive pastor at Granger. And then he was with Vanderbloemen for a while and some other places. He was with Willow. He was Willow's executive pastor for a while.
Yeah, once stuff kind of blew up at Willow, he went to kind of help them fix it.
Yeah, so he's doing his own kind of coaching networks now with pastors and church leaders that some of our team has been a part of.
Yeah,
so you got to finally experience some of that firsthand.
Yeah, and I really... not that he's ever going to hear this, so I'll just say, but like I really relate to him, like personality wise. Yeah. Like I think people look at him, they're like, he's weird. Like what? And but I think people look at me like that. What's the big deal with her? Like what's, and that's fine. I just get it. Like he's very introverted, but he's also doing this thing that's like, I would say it was like 10% presentation, 90% discussion. Yeah. And so he values that and sees that and all the networking stuff. So it was cool. I wasn't fully prepared to speak as much as I did. Yeah. I went with Aaron Masenko, and because 2 other people had been to 2 other ones, I think they already knew kind of like what we're about, and Aaron's had a good relationship with him, and so a lot of the conversations would circle. I stopped making eye contact with Tim because someone would ask a question and he would like look at me and I would, or Aaron, or not always me, but because a lot of the questions are about like culture and hiring and volunteers and how do you, So one of the cool things that happened for me anyway was this was the first time I was able to talk about like our volunteer culture to like peers who actually could put it into action versus like it being in the ether and just like us, we already know, we get it, so it was really cool to be able to put some language around it that I think it like resonated with people. You probably had a book bump. You might have. But yeah, it was really cool to just be able to, the traditional issues that you have as an executive leader is like one thing that kept coming up was like, when is the right time to hire a position? Yeah. So they would talk about it, and then Tim would go, well, Danielle, when would you guys decide to hire a position? Well, so I'm like going through all the like spoken and unspoken rules that we have and things. It was just interesting. It was a cool exercise in trying to explain what we do to people. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
My favorite answer, because I get asked that all the time too. Anytime I'm out and about, like, when is the right time to hire somebody? And I've come to my first sentence out of my mouth when I hear that question is, it's an art, not a science. Because it is like people want a black and white. Like, you've got to have some formula that when this happens, and that happens. And there are those things.
Yeah, of course.
There are those factors, but it's also not a universal thing. And so, I think helping people know what are those factors that are part of the recipe, that gets to that final product of when to hire somebody. That's really cool. I'm glad you had that experience. That was, and you had to talk, and you had to be an extrovert, and you had to,
awful.
Gather with people.
I did.
You didn't just sit alone in your hotel room the whole time. Like you wanted to.
And you know what else? And I'll say this too. I almost video chatted you one day because, when the session's over, they're like, okay, bye. See you in a couple hours. And I'm like, okay, bye. And Erin Masenko, who's a really great networker, she's like extrovert, whatever. I'm like out in the courtyard, like, where is she? She's just talking to people. Right. I'm like, we already talked to the people.
We did our job of talking.
It was very smart to put her with me because it made me have to go do that. But it was great. It was really great.
That's why I like going places with Aaron.
Yeah.
He forces
takes the edge off.
Yeah, he forces me to be with people.
Yeah.
And there's a reception before the thing.
Yeah,
an hour before.
It said parentheses optional.
Optional. And he's like, yeah, are you ready to go? I'm like, no, go to what? The reception. Like, I don't go to those things.
She literally texted. There was like a 2-hour break, and you were supposed to literally take a break. Like, it was the idea.
Right.
And I get in my room, and I'm like, sitting there for a second, and checking emails, whatever. I had taken my sweater off, and I was like, I put my sweater back on. 2 seconds later, she texts me, I'm bored.
Whoops.
I'm like, I'll meet you outside in the courtyard. It was hilarious. But it was awesome. It was awesome. It's a really good, Tim Stevens, highly recommend. We'll link his podcast or his blog or something. But it was great. Okay, so that's today's episode. Thanks for joining us. If you liked the content today, you can tell us by leaving a review, and you don't want to miss what's next. We're coming up on the end here. We only have a couple more for this season, which is crazy.
Yep.
So please subscribe and help a friend by sharing this with them. You can find detailed show notes for today and related resources over at dereksanford.com/reinventing church. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.